right, good morning, guys. Oh, there goes my phone. So if you are new or not, this is your opportunity to get to know your president and the first lady. So I am going to ask them a series of questions, and they're going to tell you stories about their life. This was honestly one of my favorite chapels as a student because the Crumes are very wonderful people, and they have great stories to share with you. So I hope you're excited. But first question for you guys is, what are you drinking in your coffee cups?
Water.
I am having coffee, although this is not my regular coffee, because once August 1 hits, that means until November 1, it's pumpkin spice season. And then November 1, it's candy cane coffee season.
Oh.
So yes.
All right, all right. Do you drink anything in your coffee?
I just put just a little bit of sweetener.
Okay, all right. That's
He
what
puts
I
a
put
lot
a
of
lot of
sweetener.
sweetener. Sometimes an entire piece of sugar cane goes in there.
Okay, so my first question for you guys is, who are you, and how did you end up at Judson?
Well, after Coach Demps just came up here, I don't want to brag, but I played 4 years of high school football. Yeah, I did. 1 year of baseball. I ran hurdles for a year, and I got an award for being incredibly average at everything. But how God blessed me along the way is finding a calling and a career in education, and wanting to be, speaking to the lives of not only you as young people, but also our adult students that we have at Judson University. So I kind of grew up in the business. My mom and dad were educators. My grandparents were educators. And my best friend in high school, David Moore, whose birthday happens to be the same birthday as my wife. So you talk about your best friend's birthday and your wife's birthday, that's easy to remember. But his family owned a great car dealership in our hometown. I was always envious that, like, oh man, it's so cool. He's got this family business, and that's a neat thing to inherit and go into. And for me, education was the family business. And it just kind of took me a while to recognize that. And then the journey took us to a number of different states and locations. And then God brought us to Judson University. And so that's kind of a snapshot of my part of the journey. I'll let Cindy talk about her journey and how it connects us together.
Good morning. Well, I'm a Kentucky girl. I grew up in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Gene and I met at Western Kentucky University. Just like education is his family business, agriculture is my family business. I grew up on a farm, beef cattle farm, but my family also owned a grain elevator, livestock feed manufacturing company. So I grew up around a lot of different agriculture. So I went to Western Kentucky and have a degree in public relations and animal science. So we met there. We did not date when we were students. After I graduated, I went to college in my hometown. For all of you commuters or close, I did the commuting thing and the dorm thing and the sorority. I did house. I did every kind of living situation there, and then moved back home. I'm like, why am I paying for this? So. But I wanted to leave town. I graduated and wanted to go somewhere. So I went to Washington, D.C. and worked on Capitol Hill for a year, and then came back home and ended up at homecoming, and Gene and I reconnected. We had been friends in college, and but that's when we started dating. Yeah. So I guess after I worked a few years, stayed home with our children. We have a daughter, Allie. You will see a picture in a minute. And we had Allie graduated from high school in Indiana before we moved here, and she did, and went to college in Nashville, and ended up in the South. She's in Atlanta now. She is married and has our first grandchild, which you'll see in a moment, and we'll talk more about him. But our son, Gene the Third, was in the 8th grade when we moved to Illinois, and he came here as a prep student, and then he graduated with a degree in music business and entrepreneurship. He was our first student to go to the Dark Horse Studio audio production class to augment that degree, and he is now he's married as well to another former Judson student and living in Bloomington, Illinois.
Thank you. Question for you is, what was your job on the farm growing up? Did you do everything, or what specifically did you do?
Mostly cattle, mostly taking care of the cattle, yeah. we did everything. We didn't raise crops on our farm, but hay season, everybody was involved. We had a huge garden, but taking care of the cattle was mostly my job. Feed and water and those kinds of things. So, yeah.
So when you met in college, what was your first impression of each other?
Well, you heard Cindy say, we did not date in college. That was her first impression of me. We didn't date in college. We were in a couple of organizations together. We were both PR majors. I was a big brother in the sorority she was in, and then we were both student ambassadors together. And even though my birthday is August 2nd, a month before Cindy's birthday of September 2nd, she graduated from high school a full year earlier than I did because my mom and dad talked my best friend David's mom and dad and our other best friend Carrie's mom and dad into staying back a year in 6th grade or 7th grade to play an extra year of football. And you saw how well that worked out, so here I am. And so we met at Western Kentucky my freshman year. I was at a social event, and Cindy was there. And I was like, I have got to get to know this person. And we became really good friends throughout college. We never dated, but we were just really good friends and pals. And then we both went back to a homecoming event. And at that homecoming event, I was hanging out with my brother and his date. He was very anxious for me to quit hanging out with him and his date. And he said, why don't you go ask Cindy Smith out? And I was like, I don't know if we're going to find her. It's the homecoming football game. My brother Lee's incredible. He's also remarkably obnoxious. And so we're walking down, leaving the game, 15,000 people, and he sees her 4 ramp rows down and just yells at the top of his lungs, you know, Cindy Smith, Gene wants to talk to you. And at that point, I needed to talk to her. And so I walked down, and I'm not one to I never had a pickup line. It was always like, hey, I'm Gene. Okay, bye. That's generally how it went. So we'd known each other. We're back at homecoming. I walked down. I'm like, hey, do you want to go out and spend the rest of homecoming together? And Cindy goes, well, I don't know. I just told this guy over here that I would go to dinner with him. And just literally, I think God put it on my heart. And I was like,
Oh.
Not done. You got to wait. You got to hold on.
Got to hear the line.
You got to hear the line. And I said, wouldn't you rather go with me? Yeah.
So, just to point out, though, there are points and times in your life. Have you ever had that time when somebody asks you a question, and it's not just a question. It's a question that makes you stop and think, right? That's God. That's God is prompting us in those situations, so we answered that. So I stopped, and I thought, yeah, I would. And earlier in the day, we had sat together at a luncheon, and I was like, and honestly, I think God had put that on in my head that day, like, oh, that Gene Crume boy was really nice. I'd forgotten how nice he was. And so when he asked me that question, it was a stop and think, and life moves in that direction kind of question. So we ended up hanging out with his brother and his date for just a little while, and then we ended up at a diner until midnight talking over French fries and hamburgers. So, yep.
So, follow up to that. When did you know that each other was the person you were going to marry?
You want to go first, or you want me to go?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I'd been asked this question a lot by young people that we had mentored and chatted with and stuff. And so, the question is, when did I know that's the person I wanted to marry? And that's because after Cindy and I started dating, it was clear to me that this is who God put into my life. And everything looked different after that. And that's what I tell folks. I'm like, if you look at the woman that you feel like that is who you absolutely know you want to be married, everything else looks different. Just work looks different, a life looks different, and it's like looking down this long road and knowing that this is who God wants me to be with, and this is what I want to do, and so everything else changes. The other thing I share is that when Cindy asked me to marry her, She didn't. She didn't. It's
Well,
just
sorta.
it's kind of a joke, yeah. That's how it
Sorta.
unfolded. But I knew there was zero doubt in my heart. This is the person that God wanted me to be with the rest of my life. Zero.
And when exactly did you know that? Because you told me a different answer before.
What's that?
Different answer before.
Oh, what was the different answer before?
So fun fact, we all went to the Holy Land together and we were hiking and I asked him this question. I asked everybody on the trip this question. And his first response to me was the first date.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Actually, it goes
Yeah.
back to that I was a freshman. She was a sophomore. I saw her at that party, and I remember thinking in my head, I would love to date that person. And so for me, then when we connected at homecoming, I remember the dress she
years
had
later.
on, everything that she was wearing. And so it's what God put in my heart when I walked down to her, just like, I was like, yeah, wouldn't you rather go with me? And that's just where my heart was, like, yeah, because that's where I want to be is with you.
And it worked out.
Worked out. Here we are, nonstop since then.
Absolutely.
So what's your story?
Same. I would say maybe gradually, but from that first time in starting our relationship and moving into more of from a friendship into more of a romantic relationship, that yes, and God is just really kind of with us and moving us in the same direction too. There was no dividing or that sort of thing, so it was just moving us in the same direction. So gradual, a few months later, and at the time, I should say, I'm back in Kentucky from Washington, D.C. He's in Dallas. So it's a long-distance relationship, and obviously he's coming home to see family, and we spent time together, but yeah. But
We actually did this crazy thing. We actually wrote letters to each other.
did.
Yeah, no. That's
Letters
nuts.
and cards. Oh, and the mixed tape. It was the 80s.
Now, I was awesome at doing mixtapes. so,
Awesome.
yeah.
Can I
I
ask?
still mow the yard with a Walkman listening to my mixtapes from 88 through 92.
What is your favorite song that you put on those mixtapes?
My favorite song on a
Yes.
mixtape, Dan Seals and Marie Osmond, Meet Me in Montana.
Maybe in Montana.
All right.
Yeah. Google it later. Spotify later.
So tell us a little bit more about your summer. So Benjamin, your grandson, was born like right after graduation, right? Roughly. So
Yep.
tell us about that
May
experience because
15th.
you guys were there for it. What was it
We
like
were.
to become grandparents for the first time?
It is indescribable. I will cry. It is indescribable feeling. Becoming parents is just such it's a ginormous blessing to think that God trusts you with this child, this small child, but then watching your child have a child, it's indescribable. We were there. I went down, Benjamin was born May 15th. I went down right after commencement, and Allie was about a week overdue. And then Jean flew down to be there on that day, and she was induced. And I was blessed to be able to be in the delivery room, and I was trying to stand out of the way and not scream and cry and all those things too. But just stood there praising God, really, because He knows us in our mother's womb. When we read scripture, we know that God forms us, and He knows us, and He has blessed our family with this new generation and this beautiful child. This is Benjamin Ray Hackrell. May 15th, he's 3.5 months old. We were just there this weekend with him to spend my birthday, and we were at the Georgia Aquarium. Oh, no, wait, that slide. Is that,
Next slide
so
is the aquarium.
Yeah. So we were at the Georgia Aquarium, yeah. So explain his last slide. Western Kentucky played Alabama on Saturday, so we were there for his first big football Saturday too. So, and Allie and her husband Grant met at Western Kentucky University. If Grant someday goes to that school, he'll be a fifth generation Crume descended to go to that school. So, but we went to the aquarium on Friday at Georgia Aquarium in Atlanta, and to watch a baby watch fish, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, he was a lot of fun. But then when you take your other child with you to the aquarium, you get the next slide.
This is my favorite one.
That's just me hanging out with the penguins at the aquarium. In order to take that picture, you have to crawl through a tunnel that's about the size of this table underneath it, and then you pop your head up. So, yeah, 59, it's a lot harder to do.
Oh, he had a great time too.
Fun.
So yeah, that was
Two
great.
of the penguins and I are still tight. We text all the time.
We did put up there was one photo where Gene and the penguin are actually looking like in the same direction. That one was good.
I was
but
doing
they
my
had a lot of fun.
Aquaman thing.
So Benjamin was dedicated on Sunday at their church, First Baptist Church of Chattahoochee. They're in Atlanta, where Allie and Grant are members. So there's a photo of Grant's parents, both sets of Benjamin's grandparents, and our daughter Allie and Grant.
And to show you how God works, a recent Judson graduate of architecture also goes to that church in Atlanta, and she was there that day too.
And those who were on the Scotland Global Outreach trip last May got stuck in Atlanta, so I went and picked them up at their airport, and we went to church at that church. And there's a stained glass window in that church with Judson Circle written on it, Judson. So Adoniram Judson's presence is in that church as well.
So speaking of church, you guys grew up in the church. When did you guys first come to know and follow the Lord?
I came to know Christ as a child. I was 8 years old when I was baptized, and I've never once doubted that the Holy Spirit entered my heart that day. I was very blessed to grow up in a church-going family. And we were there every Sunday, every Wednesday, going to church. But as I grew in my faith, from that childlike faith that I had when I was young and when I'd been baptized, you go through different cycles of your relationship with the Lord, and walking closer or farther away, depending on yourself, and then Him leading us gently back to Himself, which He did in the last part of my college years, and then most especially when I went to Washington, D.C. I was all alone and in a new experience, and He was so real, and His presence was felt in a mighty way. And other things, the church there in Virginia, I lived in Arlington, Virginia, had a music minister from my home church in Bowling Green. God just really intersected a lot of different pieces to put that puzzle together. And then coming back to Kentucky, being with my family again, and then, becoming acquainted with Gene and our relationship growing closer. God just has, moved us so closely. We've moved a lot, Gene mentioned, with his career and our marriage. And you see God's providence. Sometimes I went with my heels dug in, like, no, I can't move again. With 2 little ones, I can't do it. But you see His providence and how He moves us along. And Bible Study Fellowship has been a big part of that for me. That's the Bible study that I'm a part of. Each Wednesday, if I'm not here at chapel, I'll be at BSF. So that's where I'm at. So being in God's Word, having that constant conversation and prayer with Him, and continuing to grow and learning Him. It's a lifelong process, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, this is such a great question. And this is part of the reason Cindy and I love doing this chapel, is because this is what makes Judson different. And the thing I want to encourage you all as students to do is just take this question and just say, tell me about your faith journey, and ask that of your professors, because that is what makes us different. I can give you a number of great stories about alumni that have done that and how impactful that's been with their journey of life and just everything all together. So whether it's Professor Anderson, I see Professor Richards back there in the back of the room, Professor Carl's out in the hallway, or whether it's Tom and Bonnie, or do like what Quentin did, and just ask your faculty and your staff, say, tell me about your faith journey. What's the stuff look like and what does it mean? And so for my faith journey, I grew up in a Christian home. My dad definitely was the spiritual leader of our home. And so we went to church pretty much every Sunday with 3 boys starting off, and then our sister was born, whether we wanted to go to church or not. And then I grew up as a typical kind of goofball and youth group who was more focused on wanting to hang out and have fun and go play softball out in the field than, to really study or understand the Bible. But we were always in church. So for me, there were 3 huge moments that moved my faith journey forward. And the first was getting baptized. My brother Lee and I got baptized together. And as the pastor was getting ready to baptize my brother Lee, he accidentally said Gene. And I yelled out, "That's Lee," because I didn't want my brother stealing my salvation. Because he had already stolen shirts and hats and shoes and stuff. And so we got baptized together. That was a big moment. And then when Cindy and I got married, I knew, hey, if I want to be the type of husband God's calling me to be and the type of husband that I desire to be, then I need to take that next big step in my faith and grow spiritually. And then the next big step after that is when we began having children, and to be the kind of father I wanted to be, and speak into the lives of our kids. That was the next big moment as well too. And so, in a nutshell, that was kind of like 3 big moments of my faith journey. And whether you grow up in the church or not, that part does not matter. It is just coming to understand why even having a faith life, why even understanding Christ can change your life forever. And so we all come to it different ways. And I'll end on this. One of my blessings in my job here at Judson is I do interviews with every final candidate, faculty or staff member, for positions. It's part of what really speaks into our spiritual faith and identity, and to make sure that faculty and staff's faith life is consistent with who we are at Judson University. And I've been so blessed over the last 12 years to hear over 300 descriptions of how God has worked in people's lives. And they're all different. There's none of them are the same. And when you encounter an infinite God who loves you individually because you're uniquely created, that is a powerful, powerful thing. So I've been blessed by hearing the faith stories of most of our faculty and staff. And I just encourage you all, take this one great question and say, tell me about your faith journey. What did that look like? And you're going to hear bumps and bruises along the way. Because when I got to college, the last thing I wanted to do on Sunday was go to church. And so I did not. I kept setting the alarm. The alarm would go off, and I was like, oh, you know what sounds good? Brunch at 1 o'clock. And so I would miss church. And so I struggled throughout all of my college experience because I was too focused on fun and not enough on faith. And so there's no straight line with anyone's faith journey. So take that great question and ask your faculty and staff to say, hey, what did that look like for you?
Thank you. So you guys talked about you moved a lot, and you've felt the Lord and working in all those different situations. Where were all the places you lived, and how did you end up at Judson after all of those places that you moved to?
You want to cover where we've lived, and I'll cover
exactly.
Judson.
I can do it. So we met, obviously, in Bowling Green at Western Kentucky University. That's where we were married, and Gene started his career in higher education at Western Kentucky. Our first move was for his PhD. We moved to Virginia. We moved back to Kentucky. We were very blessed. Both of our children were born in Kentucky. And then we went back to Virginia for a job. I don't know if I'm going to get them in the right order. North Carolina. And then we went to Missouri, the Kansas City area. Then we went to Nebraska. That one was the heels dug in one, guys, you can ask. But it ended up being such a blessing to be in a beautiful place there in Nebraska. We went from Nebraska to Indiana, and Indiana to Illinois.
Yeah, and along the way, especially, I had some great mentors, and I just felt a calling to be a college president. And then through all those experiences, Cindy and I decided, 12 years ago, if we're going to make this jump to being a presidency, we want to go into Christian higher ed and make that our commitment. And so I started applying for jobs. I was consulting at the time, and then started applying for presidencies. I had applied for presidencies 10 years earlier, and so ended up being a finalist of a school whose mascot is the Eagles. I loved Eagles anyway, and I was like, this is awesome. The school's the Eagles. This is perfect. And I was one of the 2 finalists for that particular position. And then we come back after the trip. Cindy was with me on the final interview. I go running around my favorite lake where there are eagles at this lake in Indiana. As I'm running around, I literally see an eagle perched on a giant telephone pole where the nest was. And I see a hawk swoop down and pick a fish out of the lake. And I see this eagle immediately chase that hawk. And then basically the hawk let go of the fish, and the eagle swooped down and caught it and flew up to the nest. I'm like, that's a sign. I'm going to get this job, and because they're the Eagles, that's an eagle, that's God talking to me. The next day, I got a phone call, and the consultant said, congratulations, you're Mr. Congeniality. They liked you, but they're hiring someone else. So I did not get the job. And then the day after that, a search consultant that I had known from a search 10 years earlier called and said, hey, would you be interested in applying at the job at Judson University? And I was like, absolutely. I knew this much about Judson. I immediately looked it up online, and they were the Judson Eagles. And I'm like, well, maybe it's a different kind of eagle. And from there, the process just unfolded. Like literally, God opened door, and that's how we ended up here at Judson. So because of not getting a job, the door opened up to be able to come to Judson and get the job.
So you've worked here for 12 years. What is the funniest thing that has happened while you have been working here?
The funniest thing that's happened? That they've let me keep this job for 12 years. Of course, that's because I love it, and it's awesome. The funniest thing, it's like day in and day out, there's all kinds of stuff. Number one, you all as students never cease to amaze me in your creativity. Both in ways that are creatively mischievous and just creative.
Even our own son.
Yeah, even our own son. Who did mischievous stuff when he was here. I don't know, there's been a ton of stuff. Years ago, Wilson Hall had the Wilson Boys Choir, and about 30 men did a boys choir, and they're actually pretty hilarious.
Overalls and flannels.
Overalls and flannels is what they wore. When you go down and watch athletic practice, you hear a lot of funny things from time to time. As games and practices and things like that are unfolding. There's been a lot of funny stuff happen up here on the chapel stage with the creativity of the students. Judson Improv had some really funny shows. It's just pure funny. Faculty and staff, we say some funny things in moments, or we see some funny things, and we're like, okay, well, I guess that just happened. I'm trying to remember anything in detail. Can you think of? We love hosting students at our house. So every year at Christmas, 3 student groups come. We have a white elephant party. I think it's hilarious. Those are pretty funny moments there, too. Just chatting with students about life and what they're doing and things like that's pretty great. So it's the overall just feeling of the joy and energy that you have here at Judson. Not that every day's perfect by any stretch of imagination, but yeah, we have an awesome culture and climate and environment like that. So probably the funnier things are the things that happen to me. As some folks know, probably football players, soccer players, I can get a little animated on the sidelines or in the stands at basketball games, and a lot of people think that's pretty funny. So yeah.
So I have a couple of random questions for you guys. I have been told to ask you, do you have any hidden or unusual talents?
Hidden or unusual talents? Yeah, cartooning for me. I thought I'd be a political cartoonist until I got to college and realized how good they really are and how little money you make when you do that. But I still do a lot of cartooning. I can draw a perfect Snoopy, and it's like a universal cartoon that a lot of people still get today. So that's like a hidden talent. The weirdest thing I've ever done is drive a race car in an amateur feature race that was both at the same time terrifying and one of the most amazing, exhilarating experiences I had until I wrecked the car in the 3rd lap. Wasn't my fault. I didn't start it. I just drove into it.
So speaking of cartooning, what is the most special one that you have drawn?
The most special
character that you have drawn?
Oh, well, you probably know the answer to this one. It is Winnie the Pooh, and I've drawn Winnie the Pooh twice. You can clap for Winnie the Pooh. That's perfectly okay. I drew Winnie the Pooh when our daughter was born on her nursery wall when she was born.
And then last Christmas, Allie invited us back to Atlanta, or down to their house in Atlanta, for Gene to draw Winnie the Pooh, and he drew Piglet holding Winnie the Pooh's hand. So that's on Ben's nursery wall, right on over his crib. So sorry, I didn't add a picture of that one.
When I drew it the first time, my hand was like this, and then at 58, my hand was like this. So Professor Carl can probably appreciate that. I wasn't quite as precise the second time. So it looks like Winnie the Pooh has spent a week on the beach in Malibu. He has quite the Winnie the Pooh tan compared to the first Winnie the Pooh, but still proud of it. I got my start drawing cartoons on baby pools at pools in the town I grew up in.
So theater is doing Charlie Brown as their production this year. And I know you guys are big Peanuts fans. So if you were a Peanuts character, who would you be and why?
I would be Lucy. I was the oldest. I am the oldest of 4 kids, and the other 3, I mean, they need me. They still need me to tell them what to do sometimes. But sometimes they think I'm a little bossy, so they would call me Lucy. So, but I would never take Charlie Brown's football away from him. I'm not that mean, but I would be Lucy for sure.
Yeah, I'm Snoopy without a doubt. At any given moment, I'm either the World War I flying ace, or I'm Joe Cool, or I'm falling off my doghouse. You know, I'm Snoopy. There's no doubt about it.
Arguing with Woodstock.
Arguing with Woodstock, yes, all those type of things. Asking where's my food bowl, I'm Snoopy.
So who in your family is Woodstock if you're arguing with Woodstock?
It would be Woodstock. I don't know. That's a good one. I don't know that we have a Woodstock necessarily, so yeah. Yeah, we would probably, the rest of the family would relate more to the characters in Gravity Falls. Yeah, than Snoopy and stuff, so.
Right.
Like my brother Dan is Grunkle Dan instead of Uncle Stan, so yeah.
That's funny.
Our kids call him Grunkle Dan.
That's funny. Speaking of shows, I have heard you quote a lot of things, but what show or movie do you guys just quote the most?
There's so many. Of course, Disney movies. I mean, we quote Disney movies. We were quoting Nemo the other day, obviously at the aquarium. And then I look at Gene's schedule sometimes. I don't know if you all know, but just how many, and Bonnie and and Cheryl in the president's office could tell you sometimes it's back to back to back to back. And I know some of you all that meet with him are waiting. But then he's like, oh, well, I can fly here, and then I can take that, and I could do this. And I'm like, you think you can do these things, Nemo, but you really shouldn't. But so Disney movies, I would say The Princess Bride we quote a fair amount. That's a favorite.
Obviously, Elf, the movie Elf at Christmas
yes.
time gets quoted a lot.
Yeah.
One of my funniest moments is actually driving through the drive-thru wearing the Elf outfit. That was a lot of fun, yes.
Oh, and if he goes to the drive-thru around the holidays, he will give them a holiday name for his order.
Chick-fil-A, and they say, what name is this order in? I'll say Buddy the Elf. Mm-hmm. And they'll literally write Buddy the Elf on there, so yeah.
I think we should have an event where we watch Elf with you because you laugh at everything. And how many times have you seen that movie?
Hundreds. It's easily in the hundreds, so yeah.
It's honestly half the entertainment is just watching you laugh at it. It's a good time. But I'm going to end on this one question. I'm sorry, I didn't actually have this ahead of time. So when Sophie interviewed Roger and Tim and Pee-wee and I, she asked us, if you were a sandwich, what kind would you be? So this is my question to you guys to end it.
If I was a sandwich, what kind would I be?
Yes.
Or what kind of sandwich would I be?
Oh, wow. I don't know. Go ahead. I'm thinking. You probably know.
I know I would be a ribeye sandwich from the Kentucky State Fair. It is the greatest steak sandwich ever.
is.
Either that or it would be pimento cheese sandwich.
Yeah. Get a little spicy. Yeah. I'm a foodie. I like different things together, so I would be some kind of an odd sandwich. We ate at the airport the other night, right before we went to Atlanta, and it was like a Cubano sandwich with a spicy mustard and arugula. It would be something kind of crazy like that, and then it would be like pressed in a panini press and warm. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's hungry. But if I, like,
Anybody hungry?
if I had to go somewhere and get, it would be Chick-fil-A sandwich. I would do Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
All right. I know you guys have to go to class, but thank you for participating. If you
Thank
want to
you,
ask
everyone.
them any other questions, by all means, talk to them another time.
You
Have a
are
great-
dismissed.
Have a great day.